There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediation and Beyond YouTube channel, where we have conversations that matter. And today, I'm really excited to have Judith Weigle. She's a mediator. She's a podcast host. She's just an all-around experienced person in the field of mediation. And let me do an introduction for Judith. She's been a mediator for 11 years and in private practice family law for 9 years. Her company, which we've all heard about, Divorce Resource, provides both mediation and filing services for divorcees, legal separations, paternity cases, and post-judgment revisions of settlement agreements as legal document assistant. She, I guess, could say she's a paralegal on steroids, as she says. Judith is one of those rare individuals who can make you laugh while you're going through a painful experience. Her ability to see through the complexities of emotion in order to help people think through and reach a negotiated settlement is unparalleled in the field of divorce mediation, which is why I wanted to have her on today. She has experiences included in family and divorce mediation, community and personal mediation, dispute resolution. She's located out in beautiful Los Angeles, California. She won the coveted Community Mediation Award for her work on a case between the LA County Land Division and private citizen over a land dispute. She's the host of the Amicable Divorce Expert podcast, formerly known as Constructive Uncoupling. And Judith promotes amicable divorces through her work as a divorce mediator and through guests on her show from judges, lawyers, therapists, mediators, authors, and people who have been through their own divorce and can share their experience for the best divorce possible. So important for that hands-on experience. She's also the author of the internet sensation, I love this title, My Office is a Three-Ring Circus, Must I Take Orders from Clowns? A business development book, a Toastmaster and podcast host of the Amicable Divorce Expert, now in its 3rd year. Congratulations on that. Judith's philosophy: be honest and authentic, speak from the heart, and take responsibility for your actions. Judith, I could go on and on about you, but welcome to Mediation Beyond's YouTube channel. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you very much for having me as a guest, because I love your topics. I love your show.
Thank you.
I think you're doing exceptional work in the divorce space as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for saying that. One of the things that I resonated with you is about is the field of divorce, and I love the term amicable. Doesn't mean we have to be best buddies, just means we have to all get along. So what I wanted to just have people know about you, in case they'd like to contact you, which I hope they do, how did you even get into this field to begin with?
The universe. Literally, the universe pushed me forward. I was always in the entertainment industry, live entertainment, loved it beyond belief. I started out with the Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus as a marketing director, eventually married the band leader and became the dancing bear so that I could live with him on the show. So my first experience at compromise in marriage. And then just went on to work with the Chicago Lyric Opera, made my way out to Los Angeles, and started with my brother, providing entertainment for events, and then went on my own because I wanted to do a whole new take on it. And as that was going on, 2 different female attorneys approached me separately and said, you know, you have a really good personality to be a mediator. You should think about it. Well, I didn't, because I had no idea what a mediator was. And I was the entertainment business girl. I liked doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 3rd person. And we have to be careful with 3s. If something happens a 3rd time, you better pay attention, right? So the 3rd time, I was in a nail salon where all fabulous conversations take place. And the woman sitting next to me was the woman who used to own the business that I bought from her. And Deanie said to me, you know, you have an excellent personality for a mediator. You should think about it. And I said, okay. I'm being given a message. What is mediation and where do I learn it? And she told me. I went downtown, city attorney's office, got exceptionally good training there, and did community mediation, business mediation, attorney-client dispute mediation until Deanie got sick and was going to be out for a while. And she had a fabulous secretary who could take care of all the filing. And I could meet with the clients and I could do mediation. And so together we kept the business afloat until we understood that Deanie was too sick to come back. And so I bought the business. And, so it was just that unusual situation of 3 different people, and I needed to pay attention. And from that point, 2012 is when I entered the business. 2013, I bought the company. 2019, I started the podcast. And I honestly feel these were all building blocks that needed to happen. I have dark humor. And so I say, well, I come from the entertainment industry. Divorce is kind of its own dark entertainment sometimes because, Colleen, listen, you hear things that you never thought you would hear come out of people's mouths.
Amen to that.
Not to be judgmental. It's just, it's not your reality. You've not experienced, and you just sit and you listen. And so there's never a dull day, is there?
No, because no 2 stories are ever the same. And so it's always this evolving, changing group of dynamics, right? That people find themselves in. And that's what I love about it, is the stories and how people landed, where they landed, and then seeing them kind of fly and go in another direction that maybe is a little better for them.
Absolutely. And, just to tell everybody, just because you're getting divorced, you don't have to hate each other. You're not criminals because you're getting divorced, unless you actually are a criminal, but that's a whole different story. It's situations happen. Maya Angelou, the poet, said, we all do our best at any given time, and sometimes our best just isn't that good. But this is a learning experience, this laboratory called life. And we have to go through good experiences and bad experiences, or experiences that make us sad and might be hurtful, in order to grow and learn more about ourselves. So I come at divorce from that perspective. I like that you focused on the word amicable for a second, because, and I kind of say the same thing you did. Amicable doesn't mean you're hopping and skipping and holding hands into the office here. I get it. You're going through divorce. Amicable means you have the intention to talk it out. You have the intention to negotiate. You don't want to go to court. You really want to work out the terms of this transition on your own. And that's what amicable means to me.
And that's why I love the title, using that, because it really, most people can be amicable. It doesn't mean we're going out to dinner, and it doesn't mean we're hanging out on Friday nights. It just means that we're going to put our best foot forward and come to a place where we can both live with it, and it'll be okay. Right. And that's one of the great things I love about having people such as yourself in the mediation field, is that you get that too. It doesn't have to be conflictual, which brings me to my next question for you. What are your thoughts on non-legal mediators, meaning non-attorney mediators, versus attorney mediators? So in the field, in the realm of this venue of divorce, so in the divorce world.
So I'm a non-attorney mediator.
As I am.
Yes. And for a while I thought, well, gee, the attorney mediators have a leg up on us because they've probably litigated. They know the nuances of the law that maybe I wouldn't know. And then there was a point where I realized, no, the non-attorney mediators actually have a leg up on the attorneys, because the go-to place for attorneys is always the law. The go-to place for non-attorney mediators is listening to what the couple is talking about and meeting them where they are, and going with that to provide any kind of, not advice, but brainstorming. That's what they come in for. They need brainstorming. They need to be reined in a little bit. They need their path carved out for them, but they need to be listened to.
That is the truth. That is it.
They need to be listened to, and going to the law isn't accommodating them. Hopefully, and I try, and I'll ask you the same about this too, I try and say to them, please get attorney advice. Here are the issues we're going to be talking about. And a couple of these things are going to be a little sticky. Please each go to an attorney, find out the full extent of the law, the gray areas in the law, because the law is not black and white.
Mhm.
The law is sometimes, it's in some places, interpretive. So get that clear so that I can help you when I listen to you and I hear where you each want to be, and it's not the same place. But what we can do is we can visualize places that they haven't thought of, compromise points that they're not able to think of because they're very positioned in what they want.
Yeah, I also think that what non-attorney mediators are better at and maybe more skilled at, yes, it's the listening, but it's listening about the psychology and the relationship dynamic, because a lot of divorce isn't really about law, it's about hurt. And how that hurt plays into the decision they're going to make about how they're moving forward. And I think if you can, as you were saying so eloquently, just really listen, that's what makes all the difference in making a good mediation. If you can get each party to hear each other.
And you brought up something else. It's the hurt.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. They are wounded when they come in. Unless they, for the most part, go through the emotional divorce first before they start the legal divorce.
Right.
So the emotional divorce is the grieving. The emotional divorce is, and by the way, there are 7 grieving stages for divorce. There are 5 for death. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did the 5 stages of grief for death,
yeah.
There's 2 more for divorce. It's worse than death because you're still living.
I know.
And you may have to still deal with each other if you have minor children.
Yeah.
So that's really tough. But I say it this way, and it's the same thing that you said. When you're in a mediation, you have to realize that the reason for the divorce is the backdrop to what people are asking for. What people are asking for, they're trying to soothe their hurt. And maybe it's a little too much. Maybe it's, okay, if you were in a court of law, you would never get that. But that equals the hurt, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes. It's kind of that pay, right?
Yeah.
And if you can get that if you can have a little empathy about your partner's hurt, you don't have to agree with it. You just have to understand it. That yes, that person, that's where that person is at. That is where they're coming from, instead of being defensive. And I think that's what non-attorney mediators are really good at. It's that calming effect of getting 2 people. It's that calming effect and that listening, like you were saying. So I'm glad to hear your take on that, because I think that's such an important question for people, because I'd like to see more people using people in the non-legal sense with, like you were suggesting, certainly using attorneys as that outside resource.
Right. I don't think attorneys should ever be afraid that they're going to lose their position in the law. They are very necessary. The court is very necessary.
Absolutely.
And that's the picture I try and paint, a very soft picture. The attorneys spent the big bucks and the time to learn a massive amount of information and did the training in different firms to really equip them to be able to say to somebody, no, this is what the law states. This is where it gets a little iffy if we went to court. But, you know, in terms of this asset, this debt, this custody schedule, whatever it is they're talking about, clarify to the people what legal reality is. So the attorneys are very necessary for that. And of course, they're very necessary if court has to be used. If there's a high conflict personality situation, a mental health situation, a substance abuse situation, that the spouse is just, they can't come to reality on. So you do need to calm things down, and then a judge will decide. And that's what I say to people. I say, don't threaten going to court. Don't threaten calling an attorney.
Right.
These are two very useful sources if used properly. So know that they're there. We don't have to threaten. Now let's look at your situation. Where can we go now that we're sitting here together?
Well, I think you make a good point about using our court system, using our attorneys in a proper way, not as a punishment, right? Not as a punishment. And so on your Amicable Divorce podcast, what is it, the goal of that podcast? What did you want to do with that?
I literally wanted to give people the tools to calm down, look at the situation a little bit more rationally, understand concepts that they may not have thought about, that they may not have read about or experienced. And the end goal is how to make it amicable, how to take a contentious situation and make it a more productive decision-making process. So that was really the goal. And one thing, and for in your, I know you have to have experienced the same thing. Once people are divorced, I don't know that they still listen to us. We're very useful while they're going through divorce. So our job is constantly recultivating our audience, isn't it? And constantly reaching out, and hopefully people who have listened to us and found benefit in what we have to share will share it with other people they know about to embark on the same experience.
Yeah, I look at it as a lot like going to the doctor. You go to the doctor for the illness you have at the time. And then in the future, if you need a tune-up or you need to be tweaked or whatever, you kind of come back and you visit or you go again. But I do think it's a lot like that. Like you go when you really need the help. But once you've moved through it and things are kind of quiet, you don't really want to go back. You just keep going forward. And I think that's the beauty of the information that, like someone like yourself, like you have on your podcast, it's like giving that information. You can come back and get new information all the time if you need it. The goal is to obviously not need it.
If you need it. So what I do try and do is bring some people on who just are general information, general philosophers. The Power of Acceptance. There was an author, Daniel Miller, I had on 2 years ago. I met him at my brother's house at a party. His kids went to school with my brother's kids, and we sat and talked, and he had these books, and I said, oh my God, they're not about divorce. They're about his learning experience with some business issues that happened to him, and he had to accept it in order to move on and either start another business or not be consumed by the travesty that happened to him. So the power, I said, we can talk about the power of acceptance on a divorce podcast, because that's something that applies to everybody at any point in time. So I try and bring in some of those people so that if you want to get a little refresher on focus and turning a tough situation into a better one, because that's what divorce is. You turn a tough situation into a better one. I try and get some generalist people on.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think, as I was reading in your bio, having people on that have already been through it, so they can share their experience or how to go through the divorce when you want it to be more amicable, but your partner's not ready. And I think what you're saying is like mindset, acceptance, just accepting where you're at, accepting where somebody else is at, can all be really helpful. It's not all just about the mediation. It's not all just about that.
Right. It's about other relationships that you have, whether they're business relationships, family relationships, friendships. It's about any relationship, really. We can break up with anybody, can't we? People even break up with their parents.
Yes, they do. We've heard that one many times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So mediation is a tool that can be used. It can be used in any relationship. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's a skill set that can be harnessed to be utilized in multifaceted ways, right? I think That's
I
fantastic.
want, I wanted to also pick up on something that you said when you were talking about emotionally. People go through the emotional divorce at different times. The person who has the idea to get divorced first goes through that first because they have to in order to present that tough conversation to their spouse. So they go through the emotions of it. But here's the thing that will trip that initial person up. And I really want people to listen if they are the initial person right now listening to us. You have to give your spouse time to catch up. You've gone through the emotions, so you're ready now because you're ready to have the hard talk. But think about how long it took you from the inception of, I just don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think we're working well together. Whatever that starting point is, to that hard talk. Honey, I think we need to talk. And then they present. Look at how long that took you. Give your partner that much space and time to go through it themselves. And that's what people don't do. Well, I just don't understand why he or she isn't just turning in their disclosures. I don't know why he or she just isn't returning your emails, Judy. Have they gone through the emotional divorce yet? I think maybe this is what we're looking at. And if you don't have a deadline for some reason, let it breathe, because it's going to be more beneficial to you to let your spouse come full circle and meet you now at that point.
Yeah, I think if you can pause a little longer, like you're saying, and let your partner catch up, and not even in the same way, that doesn't mean they have to be where you're at. Like they just have to catch up a little. Doesn't mean they have to occupy that same feeling.
Right? They have to accept what's going on. They have to be ready to be a single person or a single parent. What if it's the wife who's been a stay-at-home mom? Oh my gosh. Now she's got to maybe think about working. I mean, spousal support and child support, depending on where you're living, and there's not spousal support in every state or alimony in every state.
Yep.
Her whole world is going to change. And you've got to give this woman time to process and deal with the fear. And then the reality of, I have to work. Not that it's bad working, and not that she may not want
but
to
it wasn't
work.
it wasn't the plan. You have a mental vision for yourself, and that wasn't part of the vision. And now you're asking for it to be part of the vision, or letting go of your kids, overnights or a couple of nights a week or a week on, week off. Like that wasn't the vision. You have to let people breathe that in. It's very challenging.
This is going to sound ridiculous, but it really moved me. So one of my guilty pleasures is watching the reality shows on Bravo, the housewife franchise reality shows. I'm sorry, I have no life when it comes to
I've seen them too.
You really? Yeah. Okay. So Tamra Judge, Tamra Judge, had 2 other marriages. Anyway, she had around 4 children with Simon Barney. She worked, but spent a lot of time with her kids. And she was saying on the show one day, which I thought was wonderful for me to hear as a mediator, because you can't hear enough how sensitive to be to your clients. She said the hardest thing for her to deal with in the visitation schedule was the silence in the house when the kids were gone, when they were with him. And I understood that.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm a musician. And so my background is in live entertainment, music. So sound is tangible to me. It's tactile to me. And sound makes me feel good or it makes me feel bad. And when she positioned it that way, the silence in the house was deafening. I said, I now get it. I now get the moms who spent all of their time with their children, what it must be like to not have them even on one overnight a week.
Well, especially, Judith, when that silence isn't by choice.
That too.
When it's not your choice, because, any mom would like a little quiet time, but she gets to choose it. And when it's forced silence, that's a very different experience to take in.
Yeah. No, good additional point, Colleen. Good additional point.
Wow. So let me ask you, in this arena, what do you think makes for an outstanding mediator? What are like the top 3 skills you think would make for a great mediator, that someone looking for a mediator, what would you recommend that they really be asking or looking for?
Humility, not trying to be the one that solves the problems for the couple, because you are not the one that solves the problems. You are a conduit. You are to move the conversation forward. You are to keep them in a lane of decision making. And if you think for a second that you know how to solve their problems, you have just lost the mediation because you're not listening anymore. So humility. And right after humility comes exercising the muscle of non-judgmentalness.
Mm.
You're going to hear things in mediation that, we're all human beings. We all have our opinions about things. And it's very easy to start judging somebody, but you can't do that because you really don't know what happened that precipitated anything that you're listening to. Your clients only give you bites, little pieces of information, because that's all that's relevant to them when they're in a mediation. But the more you ask questions, questions to allow them to be self-reflective, you start getting more of a picture. So I remember this one couple that I had, and there was an immigration issue as part of it. He met her in her country. She had a fabulous career, and he had a fabulous career. He was on assignment. And so they were planning on having 2 fabulous careers, moving to the States, moving in with a relative to save money and buy their own home. And she found out something about him that she had not paid attention to, and that was a deal breaker in the marriage.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the issue. He comes in first. And this is why they're getting divorced.
Sure.
He comes in first, and he tells me about this situation. She had such a fabulous career, and now she doesn't. She barely works. And, all she can do is this one little thing. I'm not going to say a lot because I don't want anybody
Absolutely. Yep.
And okay, so I took it in, fine. There's nothing I can do with that information. I'm filing for you. So we're doing forms. She comes in second, and she brings up this thing she found out that was a deal breaker in the marriage. And she referenced, I had this fabulous career. I planned on doing it in when we moved to the States. And when I found this out, it knocked me for such a loop. For the first time in my life, I couldn't really work. Same incident, fabulous career, isn't really working. 2 different versions of why it is.
Yes. Perspective.
And that to me, I said, thank God I just let that go in one ear and out the other, and moved on with my job of filing. I wasn't mediating for them at that time. I did eventually. Because when I heard her side, there's 2 sides to every story.
Yes, perception's reality, right?
Yeah. And so as a mediator, we cannot be judgmental. I guess the third thing, and this was really hard for me to learn, when to separate the couple. Because the type of mediation I learned was transformative, which means you keep everybody in the same room, you keep them talking, and eventually they'll work it out. Well, the more I mediated, I said, I think that came from somebody who didn't do mediations, or certainly didn't do divorce mediation.
Right. Yes.
Right? Because there are times when you can't get anything done unless you separate them. And they want you to separate them. They have asked me, please, can you just put me in the other room? I can't take the yelling. I can't take the bullying. I can't take,
Yeah, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. And then I learn, then you have to learn, okay, you have to really be good at time management, because time can go by. And you could be in the room with one person for an hour. Now, what is that other person doing? So I
Yeah.
had to get really good at recognizing, and I still work on it, Colleen. I still do, because where's that point where this is how they normally talk? This is how, everybody has their own language, right? When I'm dealing with, well, I'm Italian. My name Weigle never got rid of my married name once I got divorced. So I'm all Italian, and I know what Italians are like. I know what Sunday dinner was like with the extended family. Our voices were loud. Sometimes we argued and then we passed the pasta. Nobody got up and got mad and walked out. And so there are other cultures that are just very expressive. And so for me, I just had to learn, okay, is this just the way they like to talk? Sometimes, yes. And then they would be done and say, okay, Judy, next point, we now figured it out.
Yes.
And they kept yelling. And then the next point they yelled. Okay, then they figured it out. So, learning when to do that, to move them apart so you can get something done.
Yeah, really kind of what you're saying is have that base understanding of how people communicate. Does it work in the same room? Because yelling in the same room doesn't mean that they can't handle that. Maybe
Right.
uncomfortable for me, but it doesn't mean they can't handle it. So you have to really learn to assess communication styles, right? And know when, like you're saying, to separate people out.
Well, you asked for 3 or 4 examples. Can you add one? Could you think of one that I didn't say that's important to you?
For me, it's just, I think it has to be about both people have to connect with the person sitting in front of them. I think everyone should go in and do an interview, just a quick 20-minute, 30-minute consult, because if the person sitting in front of you, you don't both agree on, rather than let's just pick somebody and get this done, because then you're not going to get done what you could have gotten done. I think you really have to connect with that person, because you'll work harder, you'll have trust in them. And so if your partner says, no, I don't really connect with that person, I think you don't have to look at it as a roadblock or they're stalling. You need to go to another person, and that other person might be the better fit for both of you. So that would be all I would probably add to that.
I couldn't agree with you more, because this is such a personal issue, divorce.
Yeah.
And so you really have to feel comfortable with the person that you're engaging, because you're going to talk about personal issues. So I agree with that.
And I think gender plays a role. Like, some guys don't want to be in with a woman sometimes, thinking that women are going to side with another woman. And I think sometimes you have to be respectful of that. But, go see 2 or 3, go see a man, go see a woman, just see the person, not really the gender, because you might be missing out if you're just basing it on gender alone.
Absolutely. And I'm super sensitive to men, especially when there are minor children involved, because I still think men live with this fear that the kids will be taken away. I won't get to see them as much. And I agree with you. If a man says, well, she's a woman and I don't know if she has children, I don't know what her feelings are about women being better parents, more nurturing. I think men can be equally nurturing.
Amen.
I do, and I've seen it in front of me. I'm respectful of that. If you feel that a man is better and your wife is also comfortable with the male that you've chosen, you have to get the right person for you.
Absolutely. And to the male thing, I think a lot of when there's younger children and it's fathers, I always try to tell men, do not underestimate your impact as a man, as a father in the home, because a woman can never be a dad can never be a mom. Like, you have to understand, like, the significance of your role in that.
Oh, that's well said. I like that. May I steal that? I think
you may. Absolutely. I just want to end with and ask you, so you've been in this profession, you've obviously had, like myself, we've been around the block a little bit, we've had careers in different capacities and whatnot. What would you like to be remembered for?
Compassion. I think compassion, that I was a compassionate person. I was compassionate serving people, because I look at my role as serving people.
Yes.
Yes, they're looking at me to guide them, either guide them in the filing, guide them through the mediation. Judy, we need ideas. We came to an impasse. But it's the compassion that you bring to the table. I think that's so very, very important, because you don't get compassion from a lot of people.
Yes.
You know, we're all busy, and when we're providing service to people, therapists, I guess, you should, I guess, provide compassion to a certain extent. But if I were to be remembered, compassion and detail came up in my head, that I don't miss details. I like being detail oriented, because it's the little things that can trip you up. When I write settlement agreements for people, not mediation agreements so much, but the overall settlement agreement in the filing process, I have to be so very careful that I didn't leave a sentence or a phrase out that down the road they're going to need to rely on if something goes awry.
Yeah.
And so I really hold myself to a very tough standard. And once everybody's done editing the settlement agreement, I like to sit quietly and go through it to see if I've missed anything. And if I have to circle back to say, you know what, we forgot to talk about that, or we forgot to put a date on when this is going to happen.
Yep.
So I was detail oriented for them.
I think those are two really skills, innate skills. I don't think sometimes you can teach those. I think a lot of the mediation experience through a really qualified good mediator, there's a lot of innate skills. You know, there's those that you can't get out of a book. You know, and so because you can do the same mediation and be detail oriented or not. You could do the same parenting plan and be detail oriented, or, you know, and call it a parenting plan. So I think that's so important to have compassion and details. You can't go wrong with that, which would then mean they can't go wrong with getting in touch with you. So how could people get in touch with you? Where can we find you?
Excellent segue. I love good segues. You can get in touch with me two ways. If you live in the state of California, which is the only state I can file in, you can go through my website, which has an email address attached, divorceresourceinc.com, divorceresourceinc.com. Resource is singular, not plural. Or if you don't live in the state of California and you just want to avail yourself of the podcast and the information through that, theamicableddivorceexpert.com, theamicableddivorceexpert.com. And I have websites. So on both of these websites, it's ripe with information too.
Perfect. So people listening, I will put all that information in the details. So when you go and you listen, please scroll down to look at the details so that you can get Judith's information. Judith, I feel like I could be on here all day just chatting up a storm with you about mediation, relationships. I actually have loved the time spent with you, and I really appreciate you coming on, and you're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. The time has gone like 5 minutes.
I know. Right?
Yeah, no. And see, I love that you also do this, that you're also in divorce mediation. It makes the conversation so much deeper. And so this was great. Thank you for asking me on the show. Oh,
absolutely. And I think we'll be having you back because there are other things I want to explore. So I'll look forward to doing that. But everybody check out the Amicable Divorce podcast and check out divorceresourceinc.com. And I will put that information below. But thank you again, Judith. I really appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. Take care, Colleen.
Take care. Bye.